Hello, I'm Kirsten McKinnon. Welcome to Activate Me TV. Today I will be speaking with Linda McGregor about her company, Four-Legged Sages, where she focuses on providing leadership and teamwork training. Welcome, Linda.
Nice to be here.
Great to be able to chat. I'd love to start by learning a bit more about where your career started and then just as we progress, just to know how that starting point has helped you to arrive at the work that you're doing now. But if we could learn a little bit more about where you sort of kicked off in your career.
Sure. Well, I've been around for a while. I've got over 30 years experience in the corporate arena. Started in marketing and advertising. Got involved in business development and also strategy formation. And across that time, I've probably done a range of, I guess you'd call them roles, from leadership and team building through to people development and business development. So, you know, that was my corporate thing. And I guess what I always loved with that was understanding what made people tick. So that was a great thing. And bringing people aha insights about themselves and the people around them. Meanwhile, whilst all that was going on, I guess in my spare time, I actually found myself loving and working with horses, so riding horses mainly. But also then I kind of got into a situation through an injury of one of my horses, where I actually had to spend a lot of time with him on the ground, rehabilitating him, and actually learn a lot more about horses and what makes them tick and what makes them quite magical and amazing teachers, funnily enough, of humans, whilst I was actually going through that rehabilitation process with him. And I had one of those aha moments myself, where I suddenly thought, well, what happens if we actually blend together all of the experience I have from the corporate world and the work I do, and all of the experience I have with horses. So the recipe for Four-Legged Sages was a little bit one part social and neuroscience insights, which I had with my background and my degree. One part, maybe even two parts of my personal leadership and teamwork experience and that of other seasoned professionals. Mixed quite carefully, I'd like to think, with the unique wisdom that you actually get from horses and their team dynamics, and what I guess a lot of people like to call horse whispering. So that's kind of been a journey of easily over 30 years. And that's where I'm at now with Four-Legged Sages.
That's fantastic. So who are the primary clients that you work with, like in the work that you're offering? Who benefits the most from what you do?
Look, I think anyone who spends any time around horses benefits quite a lot, because they probably are better at teaching us how to be better humans than other humans are. But in terms of my, if you want to call it marketing, my target audience, the primary area that I concentrate in is corporates. So corporates that are trying to develop better leaders and are trying to build better teams that work together better to achieve more success for the business.
Right. And when I can only imagine that when they come to work with you, that there'd probably be a mixture of people who are really excited to work with the horses and other people who are a bit apprehensive and not really sure. So how do you bridge the gap between having those that are sort of more confident around, like, you know, what can be a very large, you know, hundreds of kilo animal, and those who haven't got that level of confidence? Like, how are you able to bridge that gap?
Well, you're absolutely right. You know, we have people who go from "I'm so excited" to people go "I'm so freaking scared." We get people that are scared of horses or allergic to horses, but that's part of the fun and part of the challenge. And really, it's not so much what I do as what the horses do that bridges that gap. I do tell people up front, you are not going to ride horses, because this is about how you work in the workplace. And you know, and this sometimes gets a chuckle. You wouldn't ride around on the backs of your colleagues, so you're not going to ride around on horses. So we get that out of the way, which kind of makes some people very happy and some people quite sad. But we actually then tell them that we're actually going to put them in teams, or they're going to work uniquely with a horse, and we introduce them. This is the big thing. We introduce them to the horses, and they get to see for themselves how actually quiet and gentle that these huge, as you say, 500 kilo plus animals are, but they're probably some of the gentlest teachers you've ever had. And I think that really helps settle people down and settle people around them, whether it's high energy or scared energy. And then we explain body language. You know, we talk to each other as humans through body language 90% of the time, but we tend to think very much about what we verbalize and what we hear from people. So we focus up front on getting people to listen with their energy monitors, as we call them, and we get people to watch body language, because that's the only way really initially they can understand horses. So by putting them through that, it gets them very quickly, 5-10 minutes max, and people are like, oh, this is good. I actually feel really comfortable. These creatures aren't scared at all. So there's how we do it.
And I suppose there's a lot of gain in being able to be, having to be really present, because the horses can't tell you what they're thinking. So it's very much about switching on to what their cues are, and they're giving them all the time and mirroring back. So I'd imagine that that's like a greater level of self-awareness for the people that come and work in your programs.
Well, actually, hey, I should employ you as my marketer. You've hit one of the key words. You know, self-awareness is really what it's all about. You know, I like to say one of the things that I get excited about doing what I do is letting people get to a point where they actually do become more self-aware, and therefore they can build their interpersonal skills, and they can really start building that, what I call emotional intelligence muscle, so that they're actually able to see themselves as other people see them, and therefore start to understand how they impact positively and negatively the people around them. And that's the great thing that horses do. Horses talk all the time. They just don't talk verbally the way that we do. But very quickly, you actually start to see the parallels between how they work in herds and how we work in teams, how they have leaders, how they have challenges for leaderships, how they have people that don't want to follow their leaders. There's a whole load of dynamics which is very similar in terms of how we work as human beings. So they actually talk, but you have to learn to switch on to the body language they talk in and the energy they talk in. And it actually starts to make you, to your word again, become very quickly very self-aware of what you're doing in and around both body language and energy, which normally we just don't think about.
It's almost like the horse is providing a non-verbal performance review.
Pretty much. That's a real, like we like to say, the horses provide you with a living mirror. So instead of anything like NLP, where you talk to mirror people and do what they do, so I'll do that with my hair, if you do that with your hair, I'll cross my legs. No, this is like somebody holding up a mirror in front of you for you to look at. And that's really what the horses do by the honest, instant and big feedback that they actually give you. So it's very illuminating for most people.
I'd imagine that quite a few people have, as you say, aha moments as a going through your programs. What have been some of the most substantial aha moments that you've been able to witness with people who you've been working with, you know, in that space?
Look, I could sit here all day and tell you funny stories about horses leading people that all connected to each other in teams, leading them around arenas, and people going, but I thought I was the leader. But I think in terms of the work that's important and the great moments that come out of it, I'm going to say this because it's the honest truth. I actually have great moments every single time I have a client session, because every session, every person that walks away from here having seen something about themselves and experienced a different level of interaction and response from the people around them, and actually then worked out how they can take that back into the workplace, that's a pretty great moment. And I'm lucky in terms of what I get to do, that, you know, if we have 10 people come along for a team building day or team building morning, we will have 10 people that walk away with, you know, minimum 4, maximum God knows how many moments of realization, and that's pretty great stuff. So it's really hard to pick the biggest one. I think the most emotional one is when we do the leadership work and people get to take a horse from being distant and distrustful to choosing of its own free will to choose to take that person as leader, as its leader. And that means they actually come up behind the person, which is all about trust, and in effect tap them on the shoulder and say, I choose you. And we've had quite a lot of very influential, assertive people, alphas, if you want to call it, actually break down in tears or get very teary-eyed, because, you know, it's just an experience of being chosen that they haven't had before. They've been used to having the title of leader, and this is a very different experience. And everyone says the same. It's addictive. So that's a pretty great moment, introducing people to what true leadership feels like.
And it must be interesting, like engaging in a training program that's not indoors, like
Yes.
being able to be out in nature and being much more connected to the, you know, energy in general, particularly in relation to the horses. That's a very different training feeling than it is doing, you know, in-house, you know, indoor training. How do you feel that adds to what the offer, like, you know, what you offer through working with the horses?
Look, there's lots of parts to the mix, but outdoor is definitely part of the thing that's very different and very unique about what we do, especially in kind of difficult times, whether there might be a lot of pressure at the office or you might just have kind of things on your mind. We suddenly put you into a place where you're out of your comfort zone, but you're in almost a very Zen-like place. You're outdoors, and as you say, you're connected to nature. We've got 5 acres worth of beautiful green property and horses around you. So that's a very different thing. All the briefing rooms, the debriefing rooms, all the training areas are all outdoors. So that's very different. And also the sorts of exercises that we have people doing means that they're just in a very different space. And that allows them, I guess, to unconnect from or disconnect from what they would normally assume, and potentially some of the barriers that they might have had to learning about themselves or connecting better, communicating better with team members. It's almost like we clean the slate for people and they get a chance to really start from scratch with a lot of things and build new skills as a result.
Fantastic. And the other question I had for you is just in terms of the process that you follow, is it like a mixture of, you know, actively working with the horses and then working together to sort of reflect on what you've done, like just as a bit of an overview? Can you explain this, how that works?
Yeah, so literally people will come in the morning, we'll sign in, they'll grab a cup of coffee, all that sort of stuff, and then we'll do the briefing where, you know, it's basically the humans together in a beautiful outdoor gazebo, and we talk them through what's the agenda for the morning, what are we going to do, let's talk a bit about styles of leadership, issues with team building, and let's also talk about why we use horses and how do horses communicate. Normally at that point, people are kind of very excited about the horses, so we get through that bit pretty quickly, and then we introduce them to the horses. And it's kind of like having a cup of coffee with the horses. So everybody gets a horse and gets a chance to pet them and brush them and get to know them. Then we pull them back in, brief them through the activity that we're going to do with them, and then put them into teams, or put them with a horse if they're going to be doing leadership work. And that way, we then take them from there into our training environment, which will either be an enclosed, very large Olympic-size arena or a round yard, and we'll basically start doing work with them. There's, as I said before, there's no riding, it's all work on the ground. So in the teamwork, for instance, we will have maybe a team of 4 humans and 1 horse, and we might have 3 or 4 teams. And then it's almost like a little bit of a small assault course challenge where they've got obstacles to get over, they've got problems to solve, and in all of it, they have to remember their new team member is the horse, and they have to include the horse, communicate to the horse, and be respectful of what it's saying in return, whilst remembering to communicate with each other as humans in the team. So there's quite a lot goes on there. A lot of laughter goes on at that, because there's quite a few things go wrong in a funny way. And then we debrief. So we actually come back once we've left the horses in the training areas, we come back to the training debrief area. And then we actually talk about the experiences that people had. Like, what did you notice? What did you learn? And we do all sorts of fun things like word sorts. We get people to discuss why they chose a certain word that represented that experience for them. And I think, you know, part of what we do that seems to really work for people is this idea that you're not sitting on bums. It's not death by PowerPoint. You're up, you're moving around, and you're constantly experiencing. So we talk about the fact that our sessions are all experiential sessions. And the only quieter in one place moment is right at the end, where we give people about 15 minutes worth, where they actually have what we call our reflection sheets, where it's kind of a psychologically profiled and led through questionnaire, which actually gets them to reflect on the insights they've had from that morning, what they took out of that, and then an action plan in terms of how they'll take that back into the environment of their workplace. So quite structured, but it just feels very free-flowing for people when they're actually in the moment with us for the morning or the afternoon.
That's fantastic. So it's very much about taking them on a journey from when they first arrive to, and being really, giving them opportunities to be really reflective about the experiences that they are having, so that they sort of have the opportunity to reflect on what that means in the context of the people that they're working with. I think that that's like, it must be, you must have quite a few shifts in people, I'd imagine, from when they first arrive to when they finish at the end of the session.
I mean, look, you've said it perfectly. It's very much a journey we take people on. It's a journey of self-exploring. It's a journey of exploring the people around them as well, and learning, how do you actually become a better human? How do you become either a better leader, a better team worker, and how do you therefore, as a result, have a more successful business? How do you reach your goals? So that's a pretty special thing to be around. And, you know, as you say, people walk out of here with quite a lot of aha moments, and they're looking to put change back into the workforce. One of the nicest things I've ever had someone say to us when I checked up afterwards and said, you know, how did the morning go? Did it work well? For a large team of, I think, about 20 people we had. And the guy who'd been my contact and organized it said, honestly, Linda, miracles happened that day. It fundamentally changed the dynamics of the team and how they work together for the better. So that's not a bad way to get feedback at the end of a session.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. And I've got a question for you, which is, obviously you've had a pretty extensive career. Is the work that you're doing now, would you consider it to be the most rewarding that you've had the opportunity to do?
Look, without doubt, I think what I'm doing now for me is the most rewarding thing, because I'm addicted to seeing people work out what works for them. My aha moments that you hear me talk about all the time. that's my drug. I just love seeing people have a light bulb moment, and then being able to help them by what I do, which is facilitating, help them then take that light bulb moment, which the horse has shown them most of the time, and then help them translate that into action back in the workplace. That's a pretty good job to do for a living.
I think you might be living the dream of many people with the work that you do.
Well, as my mother has said to me, you know, I remember when as a 4-year-old we used to have to stop at the side of the road so that you could pull grass up and feed it across the fence to the horse. And look at you now, you're not just living somewhere where you have horses around you, but that's what you do for a living. You work with horses, but you also work to help people be better at what they do. That's a pretty special way to earn a living. Yeah.
Absolutely. And all of the things that you've done along the way have kind of led you to this point. Like everything was a fundamental piece of the puzzle to be able to offer this,
Absolutely.
service, which is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Look, you know, I've been lucky enough, as you can probably hear from the accent, I started off in the UK and Scotland. I can do Okai the New and all that sort of stuff for you. And traveled my way through Asia, working in various places there, ended up in Australia. This is now home. And along the way, as you say, I've done everything, including cattle and horse musting. And it's all built into the final jigsaw puzzle, which is now actually a completed jigsaw puzzle in a picture. And yeah, it allows me to have the skill, and I guess some would say the wisdom, to really do what I do and hopefully do it well for people.
Well, I think that after hearing the journey that you've taken for yourself to arrive at this point, and also because of that, the journey that you're able to take people on for greater self-awareness, I imagine there are going to be a number of people that will be interested in learning more about what you do and connecting with you. Could you just give us an indication of, if someone would like to learn more, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, given I'm all about experiential, probably the first thing on my list would be, as they say, call me. So 0403 573 379. And just chat to me about what we do and what we could do for you as a leader or for your team. Or if you want to be one step away and check me out beforehand, then go to the website. So www, of course, fourleggedsages.com.au. Or just take Four-Legged Sages and Google it, and surprise, surprise, we'll be there on a bunch of social media. So yeah, there's a number of ways, but call me, as they say.
Love it. Awesome. It has been such a pleasure talking with you today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And I just highly recommend that if you're interested in learning more about yourself and leadership and teamwork, you get in contact with Linda. Thank you. Thanks, Linda.
Thanks very much for your time, Kirsten. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.